Approximately 4 years and 3 months ago, I was in the darkest time of my life. I had just become a Christian, not even a year before. I finally came to believe that the Lord was real and that He loved me and cared about me, and that He had a plan for me that was good. And while being on fire for Him, I searched for Him. I put everything I had into getting to know the Lord. And in that process, He really began to work on me. He began to remove things in my life that were not pleasing to Him, things that were hurtful to me, things that hurt others around me. And throughout that process, I basically ended up at a most vulnerable spot in my life. I was naked for the first time. All my addictions were put down. Everything that I had used to survive throughout my life, I no longer had. Relationships, my job, my reputation, as far as I felt, my furniture, everything that I had that gave me any sense of worth in my life was gone. And so I entered into the deepest and darkest place of my life. I had so much shame. I was incredibly depressed. I was suicidal. I was terrified. I can remember times where I would be like driving home from work, and it would take everything that I had just to make it through work so that no one would know what was going on. But I remember just driving home from work and everything in me wanting to drive off the road and slam straight into the wall or anything just to end my life. I can remember coming home and just hitting the floor weeping as soon as I got in the door. I remember times where I would wake up and I would be so upset that I woke up because it wasn't what I preferred to happen. I can remember just laying in the bed with the covers over my head, just in this deep, dark depression, in this sad place, with so much weight on my back, and feeling so alone, and so abandoned, and so broken. And throughout this process, I did not give up. I did not stop going to church completely. I did not turn around and walk back into all those things that the Lord had delivered me from. And so I had an encounter one Wednesday night at my church, Calvary Church, where I went down to the altar to be prayed for, and the pastor prayed for me, and I can remember, and she still remembers, that day my head was so heavy that I couldn't even look up at her. I couldn't even look her in the eye. And I was honest with her about, what was going on and about the suicide. And throughout that process, I ended up coming to the ministry that she leads, which is Celebrate Recovery, which is a 12-step Christ-centered recovery program, just to help people with anything, with any habit, hurt, or hang-up, whether it be an addiction, whether it be fear, suicide, depression, anything. And so throughout that time, I went, and I can remember my very first time going, and I remember walking to the door, and I was acting as though I was about to get a whooping. I was crying the entire time because inside I knew that I would never be the same. And so I went, and I remember walking in and into the small group and just hearing all the people speak. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was all alone, because I had seen so many people, and in my mind, Christians were perfect. They never had they had no feelings. Like, they never hurt. They were always happy, and no matter what happened to them, they were always okay. And I realized that I was actually comparing my insides to other people's outsides. And when I walked into that room and I heard other people who also loved the Lord talking about their struggles and their hurts and their hang-ups, for the first time, I didn't feel like I was all alone. And so I continued to go, and I joined a step study, which is like an in-depth class. And I joined it, and I just got so much healing from the Lord, and I was able to just make it through. And even that very first night, I remember going outside, and someone prayed for me, and she spoke against that fear that had been in me since I was a small child, just terrifying, brutal fear, which is what brought me to church in the first place, because I felt like I had tried everything, and I was going to give Him a try, and God came through and broke that fear from me. And so that night she prayed, and immediately when I left, I knew something was different. There was some sort of weight that just wasn't there anymore. And the next day I attended a Bible study that someone who is now a pastor at our church was leading about the Holy Spirit. And I just remember praying and saying, Lord, I don't really feel like I want this, but give it to me anyway. And at the end of that night, I knew that I was never going to be the same. I mean, in the car, I was talking 100 miles an hour. I was excited. I was joyful. I had something that I had never had in my life. And so that dark time, the darkest time that I've ever experienced, actually gave birth to the most brightest time that I've ever experienced. And all those things that I went through, I mean, they were nothing in comparison to that moment where I truly felt what it was like to have that relationship with the Lord, to really know that He's there, that He's never going to leave me, that He cares for me, that He was holding me in His arms the entire time, even though I felt so alone, and that it was Him who was keeping me from crashing every time I felt like I wanted to, that He was holding me steady, and that He would not let me in my life. And so I just want to encourage you and let you know that the Lord is with you. No matter where you are, He has not left you. He has not forsaken you. And I know that it can sound like cliche, but take it from someone who has been there, from someone who saw her darkest days and then turned around and saw her brightest days. And I know the word says that, you know, our latter days will be more blessed than our first. So even the brightest days that are to come in my life have not taken place. But, I mean, God is so amazing, and His love for you is so great, and He has a purpose in everything that He does. And had He not taken all those things away from me, I would not have learned how to really lean on Him and how to really allow Him to take me where He really wants me to be in life. And so if you have a program like a Celebrate Recovery, I encourage you to join it, to look into it, and just to embark on that journey with the Lord of sanctification and trust and surrendering everything to Him. And whatever you're holding on to, whatever it is, whether it be a relationship or something that you just don't want to give up, whether it be, you know, your fear or whatever it is, I mean, honestly, let it go. And when you fall, know that the Lord's going to catch you. You know, I remember in those dark days having this dream where I saw the silhouette of the Lord and He was holding me. And I know today that that was something that was really happening, you know, that really in my life He was with me every step of the way. And He's with you, and He's going to be with you every step of the way. And there is no darkness that His brilliant light can't permeate. So be encouraged. Don't give up. Don't quit. God can do anything.